Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you've watched the last video where I basically was just talking about pain and really just shifting our perspective of pain into being something that our body is just communicating with us and telling us, hey, something's wrong. Let's fix it, right? And yeah, in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about muscle pain. And why I'm bringing this up is really because we can understand that when we're in bad postures, right, we tend to put strain on a lot of our muscles. So there's something called upper cross syndrome and lower cross syndrome. And what these are is really that eventually at a neurological level, these muscle imbalances are being held. And what I like to say is that our body thinks that this is the new normal and it keeps it there, right? And that's just not healthy for us. But having said so, I think we've kind of had such a lack of understanding when it comes to muscle pain that it typically is muscle pain, painkillers, right? And we need to understand that the research is really showing, like I said in the previous video, the research is showing that the benefit of these painkillers for muscle pain doesn't outweigh the side effects, right? And if you look at really the physiology of our muscle pain, especially when we're looking at from a postural perspective, right, and a dysfunctional biomechanical dysfunction, what's actually happening is we're having what we call knots or myofascial trigger points. And these myofascial trigger points have to do with one constant contraction and two spasms. So it would make sense, right, that if we're looking at the fact that we've got these contractions and spasms, that taking a painkiller isn't really solving those problems, right? What it is simply doing is just putting a band-aid over the flashing light and saying, we know it's there, right? But what we're doing is just going to cover it up and pretend like it's not there anymore. And then it just gets progressively worse. So there are things that you can do. So firstly, muscle pain is going to oftentimes feel like tension, and people typically feel it, you know, in their shoulders, or traps. The other thing is sometimes people find that there's just a lot of decrease of range of motion. And that comes about just from the fact that I said that when we stay in certain postures for a really long time, what your body tries to do is stop any sort of movements that aren't practiced often because it fears being injured, right? So oftentimes we're in these flexion positions, forward flexion positions, and so tissue gets laid down so that we stay in these positions. And so, you get these trigger points, and now you've got lack of range of motion. And then also we can have, from the trigger points, right, we could also have muscle referral pain or trigger point referral pain. And that can be, you can have a trigger point in just over your shoulder blade, and that can come right down your arm. So that's interesting, right? Because typically when you think of pain referral, you may only think of nerve pain, but muscle can do that too. And so really, then we find that you also have these, and typically when you are quite sore and you've got these trigger points, your body has a tendency of kind of wanting to rub it, right? And it's tender, it's tender, and that's going to happen because the micro blood supply in the trigger point has been cut off. So you've got decreased nutrition, but you've also got decreased toxins out of the muscle. And then what happens is all of these toxins, metabolites kind of start forming, and it creates this vicious cycle where you've got this contraction, and then with the inflammation you've just got more and more and more contractions is kind of happening, and this becomes hyper irritable and then starts referring pain and starts making, it can even make satellite trigger points, right? So this is just something so interesting that we don't have these conversations. It's often just, oh, I'm feeling a bit tight, I'm going to take a painkiller. Or, sometimes people will say, hey, I'm going for a massage, which is awesome because then you're actually moving towards a natural way of dealing with it, right? So what do you do when you have muscle pain? One, I hope you know that it's actually from the muscle, right? So you want to make sure that you have been properly diagnosed. It's important to be diagnosed for muscle issues, right? So when you do know that you've got muscle pain or muscle tightness or stiffness or these trigger points, there's so many things that you can do before you jump to the painkiller. The first thing is checking your posture. Are you spending the day with your shoulders up to your ears in bad posture? That's going to create the dysfunction that we're talking about, right? And we don't want that. So you want to make sure that you're sitting in proper posture, standing in proper posture. You want to do your stretching. Why? Because I spoke about the fact that we've got contractions happening, we've got spasms happening. So you want to do your stretches. But having said so, it's just so important that you work closely with your physiotherapist, chiropractor, primary health care provider, so that they can help identify, if you have an upper cross syndrome, which are the muscles that you need to strengthen and which are the muscles that you need to stretch, right? So it can be a little bit more of a complicated system, but having said so, it's not inaccessible to you. So we have that. You can go for your chiropractic adjustments, right? Because if you have joints that are not moving properly, they're going to cause muscle spasms or muscle inactivity, and that obviously will affect your muscles. So make sure you're getting your chiropractic adjustments in. And then the other thing is that you can do an Epsom salt bath, which is awesome because it's got magnesium in it. And if you don't have access to that, you can get a magnesium spray, which is really awesome because you just kind of spray it on, and I love using it on patients, which is awesome, just because it has its natural, but also it kind of has like a nice numbing effect. It's really awesome. The other thing that you can do is use heat. Now, heat typically is used on more chronic conditions, and especially with muscle. What we're talking about here is the fact that if we've got decreased blood supply to the area, what we really want is to make sure that we can get blood coming to that area and bringing in nutrients and taking out all those toxins, that detoxing, right? And that's going to help reduce the pain intensity and hopefully bring about healing, because especially bringing healing cells to that area. So heat is going to be absolutely amazing. So you can use a hot water bottle, you can use a wheat bag, whatever you have at home. Okay, so I just really, there's so many other things that you can do, but I want to, there's cupping, there's dry needling, so many natural things that you can do for your muscles. And what the whole point of this conversation is I could go through video for 20 minutes on this, but the whole point of this is, one, just understanding that it's not, the formula isn't muscle pain painkillers. No. It's muscle dysfunction solution. And maybe that's what we should change it to, right? It's not muscle pain, it's dysfunction. Muscle dysfunction solution. What is the solution, right? And how do we go about maintaining this? So I hope that this has helped you. Please comment down below, send me a DM, let's have this conversation. And I will see you soon.